Jonesy and Amanda.
Jam Nation.
Well, our next guest is Marc Fennell. He's host of a chart-topping ABC podcast. He's a Walkley Award-winning journalist. And he's a host to a new documentary airing this week on SBS called The Kingdom. It explores the scandal-plagued megachurch Hillsong and asks the question, is the kingdom crumbling? Welcome, Marc.
Hello, Marc.
Hello. Hey, how are you both?
Great.
Very well. Nice to talk to you. You have kind of a personal interest in this, I guess, because 17 years ago you ran away from a Pentecostal religion.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of born into it, to be honest with you. So the first sort of church we went to as kids was the big one. It was what would eventually become Hillsong, and then I spent pretty much my entire childhood growing up in Pentecostal churches. And we had a lot of them were playing out in sort of RSL event rooms and school halls. But it's funny because I haven't really kind of addressed why I left, because I quit when I was sort of like 19, 20. And it's only now that I've sort of gone back into it and it's hard to explain to people what my childhood was like. I realised how strange aspects of my childhood was. Like, I was telling somebody the other day, I reckon I was the only kid on the street that regularly had demons being thrown out of people in their living room on Wednesdays. So it's been a bit of an unusual process, both of sort of charting what's happened with Pentecostal Christianity in Australia, but also going, I haven't really processed these things yet.
Religion's a funny thing. I was raised a Catholic and I went to Catholic schools, so we went to church every Sunday. And it was probably around about when I was about 15, I stopped going to church regularly. And I still get the Catholic guilt. So do you get Pentecostal guilt?
Well, this is the thing. I kind of quiet quit as a 19-year-old, sort of 20-ish. And it was very easy for me to just disappear. And it was only when we started to go back and look at the, what had happened with the sort of the rise and I guess fall of Hillsong and all the other churches around it, that I had to go, why did I leave this? Because it's very easy to just walk away. And I think one of the really kind of interesting things about the film is I kind of process it in real time. I got therapy and I happen to have it filmed.
Yes, well, and we look forward to seeing it. What's going on with the church? There have been allegations of sexual impropriety, of financial impropriety. What are some of the scandals that have plagued Hillsong?
Hillsong's a really interesting one because it is one of Australia's most powerful cultural exports, right? Really, when you think about it, I mean, they had millions upon millions of people singing Hillsong songs, not even Hillsong churches, all around the world. They set up churches in the US. And the lead pastors, Brian and Bobby Houston, were superstars. Like, I mean, whether you like or dislike Hillsong, you have to acknowledge they were one of Australia's most powerful exports. It should go like Iron Ore, Hemsworth Brothers, Hillsong. But there has been, as you say, allegations of sexual impropriety. Then this is levelled at various different parts of the church and financial mismanagement. And I think what's happened is we do know that lots of the people rocking up and the people tuning into their sermons has dwindled in the last couple of months, and their revenue has also dwindled. And actually what's interesting right now is there's a whole bunch of other Australian megachurches that are sort of inheriting the kingdom at the moment, and it's an important kind of turning point that we're kind of witnessing, because a lot of the problems that existed in Pentecostal Christianity now sort of an opportunity to go, hold on, maybe our relationship with money or because a lot of these churches are sort of propelled by volunteers, maybe our relationship with that isn't healthy. And so I think this is why it was really important right now to go, as one kind of dynasty looks like it's facing decline and all these other churches stand to inherit the kingdom, is history going to repeat, or can things change right now?
And they're so derivative now. They're like a Marvel franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that was weird for me is I hadn't been in one for a long time, and I remember going to visit one of the Pentecostal churches in the US, and I remember walking in going, oh, it hasn't changed. And look, no one likes to admit it, but there is a bit of a formula to why Pentecostal services work. And again, no one likes to admit it. It's always super welcoming. No one will ever question how unbelievably warm and welcoming they are at Pentecostal churches. You have your 3 big songs, your 3 emotional songs, and then you announce all the prayers that God answered in the last week. Then you do the offering, you ask for money, and then you have these incredible speakers who are just the most charismatic people on the planet, no question. And then you have this big swelling music towards the end, and that's when they do the altar call. What was amazing to me is how much they hadn't changed over the years. And there's a sort of pragmatism, I guess, about Pentecostalism, like if it works, it works. But I think there's now is an opportunity to go, it doesn't and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, by the way. They put on amazing shows, right? But it's a question of like, what does that cost? Like, what does it cost in people and what does it cost in money, and who's paying that cost?
And also, very interestingly, we had a Prime Minister, a former Prime Minister, who was very much influenced by it and influenced policy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we went back into the archives and, Scott Morrison's obviously the famous one, but if you go back, Bob Carr rocked up at Hillsong conferences.
Really?
John Howard went to Hillsong conferences. And over the course of the 90s in particular, when they started to amass these big crowds, I think politicians of all stripes really recognised, I guess, the value of talking to that community. Scott Morrison's an interesting one because I don't think either he nor Pentecostal Christianity came off that well from that. I think when he first invited cameras in to take a photo of him with his hands up in the air, which became such a big feature around the news of his prime ministership, I think I at the time thought he was quite clever because a whole bunch of people who would never have voted for Scott Morrison looked at that and made all these judgments about him and his faith. But those people are never going to vote for him anyway. But then there's literally millions of Christians that probably looked at that and went, oh, he is a real one. He's one of us. But in the end, I think it kind of was a bit of a noose around both sort of cohorts' necks. And in the end, I don't think he quite escaped people's prejudices, for lack of a better term, around Pentecostal Christianity. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to make this is there's going to be a whole bunch of people watching who've never been in one before. And I wanted to kind of explain why that world worked, so why people were drawn into the world. But then also at the same time, kind of be clear-eyed about there are problems here, right? And it's really about everyday Christians, right? Like, this is going to sound strange, but it almost matters more to me that everyday Christians watch it because there are real issues within the church that do need to be addressed, and it's about them. It's not like Brian Houston, who's the very famous, global pastor. Yes. There's no shortage of stories about his scandals, and they're important to cover, right? But there's real issues facing everyday Christians within that world, and they need to be addressed as well. There's sort of this slight toxic positivity issue within the Christian world because people don't talk publicly. Like, people hush to talk about the problems, but people don't always talk about it publicly enough. And I felt like this was an opportunity to kind of stand in the gap with my weird background in the church and go, there are issues here, but we're not necessarily attacking people's faith because, I've got family members that are still in this world and they're people. And I think sometimes when these stories are covered, there's a slight undercurrent of look at these weird people and what they believe. And my personal view is faith is I'm quite happy. I'd personally back anybody to believe anything so long as you're not hurting other people. And I think sometimes faith has a problem with that last part. Yeah. But I think that I don't want anybody to kind of hear this and think it's an attack on their belief. It's not. It's more, does this model still work and who does it work for?
You got to have faith. George Michael said it. That's the Church of George Michael.
Wow. Yeah, see, that one I can get down with.
The Kingdom is available to stream from Thursday. That's this Thursday, the 8th of June, on SBS On Demand. Marc Fennell, thank you for joining us.
The pleasure is always mine talking to you both.
Thanks, Mark.